Well, good morning once again. Welcome back. So today I want to speak on acceptance as a path to peace. Acceptance as a path to peace. There's a quote from Henry Wadsworth Longfellow that says, "For after all, the best thing you can do when it is raining is to let it rain." So acceptance is about making peace with what is, making peace with what is, making peace with our present circumstances. Many a wise person has often said that we cannot always control, we often cannot control what happens, right? Only how we respond to it. So we can think of acceptance, I think of it like sitting by a lake and watching clouds, watching all the clouds go by, you know. We watch the cloud formations and we don't really feel attached to them. We don't really have an opinion about them. We let them come and we let them go, all right? You know, we've been there. We've all been there in that peaceful, easy feeling, right? Where we can let be what is and we're not resisting anything, right? We're aligned with the present moment and what it's bringing. Eckhart Tolle talks about how whatever the present moment is bringing, work with it. Work with it, not against it. And act as if you have chosen it, whatever it is. And of course, that's not always easy, right? Because we face things that we're pretty sure we did not choose, we didn't want, right, at times. But that is the moment when the mystery of our life journey, seems to demand that we go deeper and we discover something that maybe we've never found before in ourselves, right? You know, in the analogy of watching the clouds, you know, sometimes we enjoy the white puffy formations, but we don't really enjoy those big, stormy, dark gray clouds that have lightning in them, especially in the middle of the summer, right? We have an opinion and we resist those big, ominous thunderstorm clouds. I've always loved that Joni Mitchell song, Both Sides Now. My mom and I used to sing that when I was 10 years old, I think, when she first came out with it, Joni Mitchell. But I love it because she's poetically talking about both sides. You know, she's got these two different views that she's laying out for us about clouds, about love, and about life. And, you know, one of the views is accepting. It's accepting and it's embracing, and the other one is resisting and feeling disillusioned about life, right? Have you been there? Have you felt both ways? Am I the only one? You know, bows and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air and feathered canyons everywhere. I've looked at clouds that way. Okay, that's one day. But the next day, now, they only block the sun. They rain and snow on everyone. So many things I could have done, but those clouds got in my way, right? And then the last line of the chorus, I really don't know clouds. I really don't know love. I really don't know life at all. That's actually a really good place to be in the I don't know, you know, in the beginner mind. Like, I have more to learn. I have more to understand, more to figure out about being here. So we all have this experience of wrestling sometimes with what life is bringing, right? And how hard it is sometimes to accept the hardship, right? But there is this inner divine presence. There is this loving awareness that we are, that is our true nature. And that awareness of us does not have an opinion. It doesn't have a problem. It's free. It's always at peace, and it's always free. And it's very spacious, and it has room for our struggle. It has room for our fears. It has room and compassion. It has this compassionate spaciousness to hold us, to comfort us, to guide us while our mind and our emotional body go through the process of getting to acceptance, right? It's this allowing, loving presence. And it's okay for us to not be accepting, right? And to feel resistance, for us to feel scared and to deny something till we're ready. You know, our minds sometimes, to get to complete acceptance, need time. You know, when we're facing something that we really didn't want, right? Didn't plan. So we can even accept the presence of denial and see that denial even has its place in order for us to process things at our own pace. You really understand this with grief. You know, you really get to a deep understanding of how there's sometimes a process of getting to acceptance, you know, and it takes time with big things. The psychiatrist and the founder of analytical psychology, Carl Jung, he was having this great life, right? He was famous and things were going well, and he was brilliant, right? And he was coming up with, you know, these great theories, and, you know, he was sharing a lot of wisdom. And then he had a heart attack. And he describes it as a very painful process of defoliation. I think that's an interesting word. And this is his words. Everything I aimed at or wished for or thought, the whole phantasmagoria of earthly existence, fell away or was stripped from me. And, you know, we can understand this. If you live long enough, you're probably going to deal with some unexpected illness or injury or loss in a fire, right? Or loss of a relationship, a tough breakup, loss of a loved one, loss of a job, loss of a home. And that can ask so much of us. So to get to where we can accept it is not resignation. Resignation is this whole other thing. It's a different thing. It's more of a reaction, and it's more of a resignation, a giving up, almost a hopelessness. Whereas acceptance, it's a response, and it allows for a possible new chapter of profound growth and transformation, right? There's a book. Have you read The Wild Edge of Sorrow? Anybody read The Wild Edge of Sorrow? Wonderful book, isn't it? Francis Weller. And he writes about a man that was coming to see him that had a heart attack. And this man was very type A, and he ran a big company, and he was used to a lot of power and a lot of authority. And, you know, he was top of the chain of command. And Francis said he sat for weeks listening to this man, you know, who was desperate to reclaim his former strength, right, his former authority and power. And so one day Francis just couldn't take it anymore, and he finally said, you know, I'm concerned that you're going to waste a perfectly good heart attack. And so he went on to explain that. He said, you know, you're so committed to returning to how things were, but have you thought that that's exactly probably what caused this heart attack? You know, that the conditions that brought about the heart attack, your work now is to hear what your heart is telling you, trying to tell you, right? And I think about heart disease. I mean, I think heart disease being our number one, you know, health issue in our country, I wonder why. You know, I think our hearts might be trying to tell us something collectively, to open, not close, to become softer, not harder, right? To embrace everything with loving kindness and compassion. That's what my heart tells me anyway when I'm listening, right? So this therapist, you know, Francis, he was telling this man, you've turned your back on many things. You've turned your back on love and on friendships. You've turned your back on your body, right? And your heart is filled with grief. And this heart attack is telling you something. Please listen. Please listen. So it was difficult for this man, you know, because it was asking for a radical change in his life and his view. You know, sometimes an illness or a loss, you know, it throws us into great uncertainty. Anybody been there? Great uncertainty? Two hands. Where the old world is left behind and something deeper in our life is calling us towards it. But we're in the great unknown, right? that place is a very rich place. It's a very holy ground. If we can trust and we can get to acceptance, and it takes the time it takes, right? It's like the alchemy of turning metal into gold, right? You know, I think one of the biggest lessons of Earth School is learning to embrace everything and welcome everything that life brings. You know, I think it's as we emotionally mature, we learn to allow all the feelings, every emotion that we experience, the sweet and the bitter, right? The beautiful and the painful. And that grows the immensity of our soul. You know, I know for me that the hardest times have grown the deepest compassion in me. And that's been my prayer. That's what I want. I want to become love. I want to become, you know, compassion and loving kindness itself. So Kat Duff, she wrote a book called The Alchemy of Illness. And she said her goal was to restore mystery and dignity to the experience of being sick. She writes, "We are not responsible for our illnesses. We are not responsible for our illnesses. We are responsible to them, to what they offer and require of all of us, sick and well alike. Ancient peoples have taught us how to honor and utilize illnesses as special resources on our spiritual journey." Yeah. So there's a different view. Sometimes I think it's too narrow of a view in New Thought circles sometimes. I have noticed, being involved in unity and religious science for many years, that sometimes we can get so attached to things being only positive that it becomes toxic, right? And that we need more holistic view. I have a song called Embrace It. And the words are, embrace it, all that seems unlovable. Embrace it, all that seems dark. Embrace it, all that seems unlovable. Embrace it and be whole again. So, it's hugely challenging sometimes to embrace these hard things, but this is what life is. It's a full plate. It's a smorgasbord of experiences. And we have to trust sometimes beyond the mind's perception, right? There's a poem by Pesha Gertler called Healing Time. I love this poem. It goes, "Finally on my way to yes, I bump into all the places where I said no to my life. All the untended wounds, the red and purple scars, those hieroglyphs of pain carved into my skin and bones, those coded messages that send me down the wrong street again and again. Where I find them, the old wounds, the old misdirections, and I lift them one by one, close to my heart, and I say, holy, holy." When we speak of embracing everything, we have to include those untended wounds that need our embrace, that need our love, and see them as holy. Those places where somebody said something when we were a little kid and we decided we weren't wanted, or that we weren't loved, or we weren't worthy, right? We have to embrace these untended wounds with courage and willingness, right? I feel like the focus on only being positive, there's a term in psychology, it's called toxic positivity gaslighting. That's a mouthful. Toxic positivity gaslighting. Don't do that. But it's really where we're pressured to only be positive, right? And we think we have to suppress any negative emotions or reactions or experiences. And unfortunately, that invalidates the human experience, the whole gamut of it. It's not healthy, and it's incredibly isolating. I'm really grateful. My background has been Hindu and Buddhist, way, way before I found New Thought. And I love the Buddhist teaching, actually, on the Four Noble Truths. I think there's just so much wisdom. The very first truth is that there is going to be some inevitable, unavoidable suffering in life, right? But then the second, third, and fourth noble truth are, okay, this is what causes suffering. Let's examine that. And this is the path through it. This is the path through it to the other side, to freedom from suffering. Eckhart Tolle writes that suffering's a natural part of life and has a noble purpose. And to hold the thought that we shouldn't suffer is the ego resisting the nature of existence here on this 3D planet, right? I've never been one who likes crosses. I've never really related to crosses, especially when I was younger. And my great-grandmother loved them. They were all over her house. And she gave me this big silver cross. It was probably about 10 or 12 inches with Jesus on it, right? And so I had it. I hung it because it was from her, and I loved her dearly. But there was always something about it that bothered me in my younger years. And when I got older, I realized what bothered me is the focus on just the suffering, right? I just felt like sometimes the focus in Christianity traditionally just got stuck on the suffering and the original sinfulness, right? And I felt like, let's focus on the way out of suffering, right? Taking Jesus down off that cross. And all his teachings were how to become free of suffering, right? They were all about loving and forgiving and serving others and, seeking the kingdom of heaven within. And when you're aligned with that and awake to that, suffering hugely decreases, right? But what was funny is in one of my moves, I was moving that cross off the wall, and Jesus fell off the cross. And I had never realized that he was just wired on there, and that he was a separate part. And I was so happy about that. And then I carried the cross. And then I was happy with the cross, right? I was happy to hang it. So, we've heard that saying, we all have our cross to bear, right? But it need not be in vain, and I believe that through the suffering, with the right view of it, that's key, and that's why I'm speaking on acceptance as a path to peace. With the right view, we can grow exponentially. We can bring something more to the ever-expanding, infinite God of our being, right? The God in us. And it's important to remember we're not alone in our journey, And that's so part of why I created this unity community, is so we could be together. And I want to create more experiences where we sit in circle and share. We have some coming up for sure. Because if we do sit in circle and share like we did at our retreat, we realize, our stories are so similar, that we're all going through very similar challenges. And when we hear each other, it's kind of a relief. And also we have the intelligence that we share with each other as to how to meet the challenges, right? We're all in this together. That's the thing. There's a poem from Henry Longfellow, again, the theme of rain and clouds. He wrote, "Be still, sad heart, and cease repining. Behind the clouds, the sun still shining. Thy fate is the common fate of all. Into each life some rain must fall." Doesn't that just kind of make you feel, oh, okay. Okay, I can accept it's not all, roses and peachy and perfect and easy. So, we have to be careful not to make anyone wrong when they're not feeling positive. I think that's really important. And that really means that, we can't begin to heal until we're honest about how we feel. We have to be honest. That's why I like that. That's called a noble truth. There's suffering. I don't know where we learned it or who came up with it, but we always have to say, "How you doing?" "Oh, I'm fine. I'm great. How are you doing?" "Oh, I'm great." And then people go on their ways and they feel so alone because they haven't been able to share their pain with anybody, right? They haven't been able to just tell the truth that, gosh, it's been hard lately. I haven't slept, or whatever it is that people are going through. So it's beautiful if we give each other permission to just be more honest and authentic, and hold space for each other. Be accepting and allowing. Sometimes our ability to respond with acceptance versus resistance can even save our lives. I was listening to a story on Moth Radio. Does anybody listen to Moth Radio? They have some really great stories. I used to listen to it driving when I used to travel all the time. But there is a funny story this woman tells about a situation that turned out well because of her ability to be accepting and work with it. This woman, Randy Skaggs, she's from Louisville, Kentucky. And she was alone. She moved to New York City from Louisville, Kentucky, and she was alone one night on this dark street. And this man came up and he said, "Get me some money, lady. You won't be the first person I killed." And so she considered running, but she was slow, right? Very slow. So she did what she does best when she's nervous. She started talking. She said, "You know, I don't have it as bad as you do, sir, but I'm sleeping on the floor right now, and all I ever eat are ramen noodles. It's not that I've lost any weight or anything. But, you know, people from Kentucky call and they say to me, 'Oh, my God, New York City, wow, you've really made the big time.' But I don't have the heart to tell them I'm just a cliche, the kid who moved here to change the world with her theater. But I'm not going to change the world. My theater stinks, really. I miss my mom. I miss my porch swings. I miss sweet tea. So would you please not kill me so I can just go back home where I belong?" And the robber looks at her funny, he cocks his head, and then he just reaches out and he just gives her this gentle bear hug. It's the first intimacy she's had in months. And then he's off and she doesn't get robbed, she gets hugged. It's such a funny story. It's so endearing. And of course, you know, all robberies don't turn out that well, right? But but in this case, she kept her cool, right? She just embraced a difficult situation with a lot of humanness, right? And she just talked to the guy like he was a good friend. And, you know, she shifted the whole situation. So the moral of that story is when life brings us challenging moments and situations, as Tolle says, work with them, not against them, right? So, yeah, and be your human self. Be your sweet, crazy, goofy human self. So in closing, acceptance is essential. It's a really essential spiritual practice. It's a skill, and it's a quality we can cultivate, we can grow in, and it allows us to meet what life is bringing with greater awareness, and that comes from really trusting ourselves. It comes from trusting life. When Einstein said, you got to decide, is this universe benign or malign? You have to decide. And I know for a fact it's benign. It is a loving universe. So we trust in that, we trust in life, and we have a willingness to meet it as it is. So I hope this talk has been insightful. I'd love to hear about your journeys, what you're learning in your journey with acceptance. May you and may all your relations and may all beings be at peace. Om Shanti. Thank you.